Okay, this video is the SeeSaw concept of health. So basically, there's different states of being. You can be asleep or you can be awake, and most of us need to get more sleep. Okay. The next one is you could be postprandial. Prandial means to eat, so postprandial is after eating. When we talk about that, because those are different states of being, the post-eating phase. If you're only eating once a day, like I eat the OMAD diet, 1 meal a day diet, I'm only postprandial in the evening. The rest of the day, I'm more of in a fasting phase. Okay, somebody who eats 3 times a day spends much more of their time in the postprandial phase. Okay, a little bit about some of the differences, the big difference between eating meat versus eating plants. So red for meat, green for plants. Meat tends to have most of the bad stuff. It has a lot of animal protein, which, as T. Colin Campbell wrote about in the China study, increases your risk of cancer. A lot of methionine, the sulfur-containing amino acids that can lead to a low-grade metabolic acidosis, buffering of your pH by the kidneys excreting the proton, simultaneously excreting calcium, so it leads to osteoporosis. It increases the risk of kidney stone formation because you got calciuria in the urine, the calcium being excreted simultaneously with the protons. You got more leucine as amino acid composition of meat, such that that causes more activation of mTOR, which is thought to accelerate the rate of growth in cancer. Okay, it tends to be the rate-limiting step for mTOR, a nutrient-sensing pathway, like a contractor getting ready to build a building, needs all the materials, it's waiting for leucine, now it can build. More of these omega-6 fats, like arachidonic acid, which is sort of tends to be associated with inflammation. You know, everything I'm saying here is a little bit oversimplified, but it's the key main points to get out of it. More estrogenic chemicals. They can give estrogenic chemicals to the animals, the livestock, to fatten them up faster. It's a fat storage hormone. Woman's estrogen is high when she's pregnant, tells her to gain weight, store that weight. The baby might need it for energy. Increase iron in meat, like red meat. But, there's also iron in iron-fortified foods, so you got to be careful about that. But you can get excessive iron overloaded, and the consequences of that increase oxidative stress. There's often pesticides that the animal accumulates from eating high in the food chain, eating pesticide-sprayed non-organic food. HG is a common thing in fish. Okay, plants tend to have the good stuff. They got the AOs, antioxidants, the potassium and magnesium, vasodilators, the dietary fiber, which you need to protect your gut barrier and your blood-brain barrier. Nitrates are precursors to nitric oxide. So all the good stuff is in plants. All right, calcium is sort of overhyped and claimed as a great thing you get from dairy, but you really don't need that much calcium. There's like no such thing as a true calcium dietary deficiency, and the more calcium people eat, if they start getting over 1,400 milligrams a day, they have a 2.6 times increased rate of death. Okay, I think what's happening is it's a transient bolus of calcium. It's a clotting factor, and it makes the blood transiently prothrombotic. Whereas magnesium, which comes from plants, magnesium is right in the center of chlorophyll. That's a vasodilator. You need that to run all your ATP reactions, like your potassium-sodium ATP pump in your plasma membranes, which determines how well your neurons function. So it's an essential thing, and people tend to be low in that. People are low in all the stuff that comes from plants: magnesium, potassium, fiber. Okay, different way to look at these pathways. You want to spend time, if you can, in sort of a maintenance phase. After you exercise, you go into what's called the AMPK pathway. AMP is for adenosine monophosphate. That's AMP in comparison with ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And the point is, after you've exercised, the body wants to go into a restoration mode and sort of to reestablish its ATP storage levels. Versus when you're just overfed and sedentary, you've got more ATP sitting around. You've got more amino acids sitting around for activation of mTOR. And again, if you're a 20-year-old bodybuilder, I can say you can make an argument for eating meat because of the creatine and the increased leucine to build your muscle a little faster. However, once you're past 30, man, you don't want to accelerate cell replication. A couple other things in here. The maintenance mode of, I'm gonna go into this some more too, so I won't talk about it too much now. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of ways to look at this. Where you want to spend your time. So all this stuff leads to accelerated aging and death, the excessive intake of animal foods, animal protein, and as well as toxins. We're not going to get into it all right now, but these excitotoxins, mitochondrial toxins, SERCA inhibitors, all of these things are going to damage your health. Okay, and these are all the things that increase your health. Having people you love, having a good social system, having a purpose in your life, religion, gratitude, attitude of gratitude, optimal body weight, get your sunshine, exercise, comedy, social. Okay. I'm going to keep getting more and more complicated, but I'm sort of building on these basic introductory slides here. You don't want to be too sedentary. When you sit around, your blood starts to thicken a little bit. Blood's thixotropic, unlike water. If you put water's like a Newtonian fluid. It's the same seated, unmoving as it is moving. Blood's thixotropic, meaning that if it sits, it starts to aggregate a little bit. And I think that's part of why if you go like on a 2-hour drive and then you just get out of your car, you're all kind of stiff and slow till the blood sort of disaggregates a bit and starts flowing more smoothly. All kinds of good things happen when you exercise. You get genesis of good things, neurogenesis, the formation of new neurons, angiogenesis, the formation of increased blood vessels in the area you need them that were active with your exercise, mitochondrial biogenesis, the formation of new mitochondria in your brain cells. You also get glycogen supercompensation, meaning increased storage of glycogen in your astrocytes, the supporting cells for your neurons. They all increase your brain function. You get more immune function because you pump your lymphatics, so your white blood cells travel around the body more rapidly and can do all their interactions. They interact like Braille with the other cells, and they're more efficient at it, removing cancer cells, for example, removing infection material, debris, necrotic material, etc. You'll sleep better when you're exercising. Okay, now we're going to get into one of the more key points of this talk, the SANS and the PANS. So SANS is sympathetic autonomic nervous system. PANS is parasympathetic autonomic nervous system. SANS just means stress, like fight or flight. You know, the classic way to remember it, the metaphor of being chased by a tiger in the dark, saber-toothed tiger. If the tiger were to claw you and you bleed, you want to clot fast, so your blood is prothrombotic, okay? You don't need your immune system for the next half hour while you're trying to just climb a tree and survive this saber-toothed tiger. So all the resources, the body has limited resources, so it shuts off things it doesn't need. It shuts off the immune system. And that's why, you know, our stress response is made for a quick physical response to a physical problem. But if a person has prolonged psychological stress day after day, week after week, that means they have prolonged suppression of their immune system. They're more vulnerable to infections. They're more vulnerable to cancer. Okay, parasympathetic has been described as feed and breed. A good time for making the two back beasts is after you've had a nice meal and then you go to sleep, okay? Rest and digest. And so the fight or flight's been called the accelerator, and this has been called the brake, to cool things down. And a little bit of what this is saying is when you're activated, fight or flight, things are not okay. You know, your body's paying attention. It says, there's a potential problem here. Our ancestors were out in the wild and, you know, they were potentially going to be eaten by lions and tigers and bears and stuff. So if they sense lions and tigers and bears are nearby, things are not cool. You better pay attention, and that's what matters at the moment. Whereas when things are cool, you're at rest, you're with your family, with your group, and you're, you know, with the woman you love, okay, it's time to just enjoy your meal, joke around, be playful, and have fun. Things are good, okay? So you want to spend as much time of your life as you can in PANS rather than in SANS. You need a little bit of SANS. I'll talk about that on the next slide, or the slide afterward. This is just showing other hormones associated with SANS and PANS. So SANS is cortisol and the catecholamines. Catecholamines mean adrenaline and noradrenaline, okay? The opposite is PANS. You got melatonin and oxytocin. So melatonin is the sleep better hormone, especially. Oxytocin is the love hormone, you know, for connection, social connection, and all that. Okay, so here's a magnificent painting by Netter. Frank Netter was the great artist of human anatomy and physiology. His anatomy atlas is like the Sistine Chapel of anatomy by Frank Netter. The guy was a genius. He did a surgical residency, and he was an artist too. Okay, so anyways, this guy's pissed off, okay? You know, being chased by a tiger in the dark. His pupils are dilated. He's got the blood flow going to his muscles. He's ready for fight or flight. So that is the stress response. And what happens is our sensors in our body send a signal to the hypothalamus. Things are not okay. Things are not okay. Be ready for fight or flight. Okay, this is the real deal. This is not a drill. Things are not okay. Be ready. All right, so there's constantly talk back and forth between all the sensoring neurons, our eyes, our ears, our proprioception, our sixth sense, our spider sense. Okay, I'm just kidding with that. But anyways, the point is, we're always paying attention. Like in our eyes, our periphery of our eyes is black and white, the rods, okay? And they're good motion sensors. So they sense motion, then we turn our head and we look. So we get both our eyes, stereoscopic vision with tightly packed cones, color vision, to figure out what the thing is that's coming towards us. Oh, It's my friend. Everything's cool. Oh, it's not my friend. It's a potential predator. Things are not cool. Be ready for fight or flight. Okay, so the brain's constantly paying attention to that because the brain's like just about the most real thing in the world. Your brain, the purpose of your brain is that you can walk down a path in a forest, a jungle, or a prairie and survive. Okay, that's what the brain's all about. So there's nothing BS. There's none of this fake gaslighting social crap in popular culture. The brain is to survive. Okay, why do humans have brains but plants do not? Because humans move. Once you start to move, you need to make a value judgment, pick out a destination. I'll go towards the food, I'll avoid the danger. You need to have a memory, how to remember to get back to where you came from. You need to be able to navigate obstacles in your path. Okay, so motion makes you use your brain. Okay, now we do need some stress. This is the Yerkes-Dodson curve, and basically, if you don't have any stress at all, you're asleep. You're lethargic. You know, you can't do anything. You're not motivated. No energy. All right, so you want to have some stress. You don't want too much stress. If you're overstressed to the point where you're anxious, that's distress. That can make you choke. That can make your performance suboptimal. So what you want to be is psyched up for the opportunity and go for it. And that's called the peak performance zone. You're in the zone. You're focused, okay? And that's where you want to be. You're ready to go. You've been looking forward to this, whatever it is you're going to do, and you're ready to compete. You're ready to meet the challenge, okay? So that's why you want to figure out what does it take to get you into this optimal zone. Sometimes we call it eustress. EU means true in this context. Eustress, flow. It's also called a flow phase. When you're ready to crank, you're in the zone. Things are cool, and you like what you're doing, and it's a challenge, but you're going for it. Okay. And that's where you kind of want to be when you're doing work that you like. Okay, and then this is just another reminder of what does cortisol do. So cortisol is the big hormone of stress. The big thing cortisol does is it cranks up your blood glucose and also puts lipids into your blood so that energy will be available to your muscles and your heart that are rapidly exercising, okay? But cortisol is bad to be up long term. It'll cause insomnia, you don't sleep so well, chronically raising the glucose in the blood and the fat in your blood is going to give you insulin resistance, can predispose you to diabetes, shuts off your immune system, it causes osteoporosis. All kinds of bad things, hypertension, your volume overloaded as a mineralocorticoid effect to retain fluid and sodium, okay, and anxiety, it has an excitotoxin effect, bad for your brain, chronically to be stressed because you're going to be sending more glutamate, the excitatory neurotransmitter, in excessive amounts across your synapses. Okay, like I said, it shuts off your immune system. Not good on a chronic basis, can't fight infections, can't fight cancer so well. Okay, excessive stress is associated with increased cancer. Here's just one paper on it. Same old thing. It turns off the parts of your immune system that fight the cancer, like the NK cells of your innate immunity, the cytotoxic cells, T cells of your cellular immunity. Okay, and again, here's what this is all about. Your fear center in your brain is called the amygdala. Amygdala means like almond in Latin, and it's what senses danger and fear. And when it senses there's a problem, it will tell you, hey, it'll send a signal up to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is like central headquarters of the brain for deciding if things are cool or not cool. And it says, things are not cool. Danger is approaching, and you better get ready to move, fight or flight. Versus the rest of your brain might say, hey, no, things are cool. That is not danger. That's just my friend, okay? We can talk to him. Let's just enjoy ourselves, okay? Things are cool. All right, so the brain constantly is having that because our ancestors were worried about surviving in the wild. Okay, one just point about the Rossetto effect and social support is, look at this old guy, he's sick. The reason he's still alive is because his family takes care of him. Social support system is very beneficial to us all. As Aristotle said, the family is the invention to provide for man's needs, okay? It is the unit of society, mother, father, and their children, okay? Okay, the Rossetto effect was in Pennsylvania where they had these Italian extended families with mama and papa, the children, the grandchildren, the grandparents, all living in the same house or next door to each other. And so, like, let's say the cousin Luigi loses his job. Well, Luigi can just live with his relatives for a couple days. They'll feed him for a couple months till he finds a new job. If Luigi's living by himself in an apartment downtown, he loses his job, he's screwed. He can't pay his rent, can't buy food. So that's the Rossetto effect, and meaning that these people were very healthy, these Italian families in Pennsylvania, when they were all together. Then they all started breaking apart and moving to different places, let's say in the 1970s, and their health went into the garbage can, just like other populations that weren't so close-knit. So humans are made to live in social circles. Okay, Bessel van der Kolk's got some good quotes about how we calm down, we feel at peace when we're with people who we can be ourselves with, and that visceral feeling of safety lowers our stress, lowers our cortisol and catecholamines, so our immune system works better and we can heal physically, psychologically, we can fight off infections, we can fight off cancer more effectively. The brain tends to be in one of two modes. You can be in what is called the if you just take a patient, you put them on a functional MRI scanner, have them close their eyes, and you ask them, so what you thinking about? They're usually going to say, I'm thinking about my relationship. My girlfriend last night wanted to go to a movie, but I couldn't because I had to study. But, she's a little annoyed with me, but I'll make it up to her on this Saturday. I'm going to take her out to a movie. Okay, so you're thinking about the past and the future. So you cycle back and forth between the past and the future with your cingulate gyrus. That's called your default mode network, and that's continuous through the isthmus into the medial temporal lobe. Okay, then the other part of the brain that's relevant here is the cerebral convexities. That's your task-based network, and that pulls you into the present. That's like what you use for, being busy at school, being busy at your job. And so the point is you can only do one thing at a time with your conscious mind. So one of the great things, if you're sitting there obsessing, she loves me not, she loves me not. Okay, enough of this nonsense. Go get busy. Let's lift weights. Let's go play a sport. Let's go do this thing we have to do for work or whatever. So what I'm trying to say is one of the best things a person can do when they're anxious or they're sad, depressed, whatever, is just get busy with a task that requires them to engage and to pull themselves into the present. And the interesting thing about this is how the brain time travels. When it's in the present, it's out here in the task-based network, primarily along the convexities, it's active. When it's thinking about past and future, it time travels in the cingulate gyrus, okay? And then the salience network is just to pay attention to change. We're very much sensitive to change because, like I told you about our ancestors out in the savannah, the jungle, the forest, and, they sense motion. Is it cool or not cool? And that's why you can't study if the TV is on right next to you because you have to look. We're programmed. We're made to look, and you're distracted, okay? So the salience network keeps you up on what's going on. K factor just means that you normally want to eat at least 5 times more potassium than sodium in order to have good blood pressure, okay? And that's a real easy thing to know. The main reason that people tend to be hypertensive, like the hypertension off the chart, let's say in blacks in America, is because they tend to not eat enough potassium because they don't eat enough plant foods. And they don't eat that much sodium. They were eating less sodium than a lot of persons who weren't so hypertensive. So the key thing is this ratio of potassium to sodium, okay? And, the famous guy, Richard Moore, who wrote the great book, High Blood Pressure Solution, says you got to be at least 5 to 1. I would say you should probably, be more than that. It's pretty easy to be 10 to 1. And our ancestors were more than that if you're eating a plant-based diet because P for plants, P for potassium. And the way it all works is you have ATP pumps in your plasma membrane of your cells, and they take in potassium and they pump out more sodium. 3 sodiums for every 2. That's 2 potassiums brought in, creates an electrical gradient across the plasma membrane. You also have a chemical concentration gradient, 10 times as much sodium compared to outside compared to inside the cell, and that's what you use to pump stuff. So the bottom line is we tend to be deficient in potassium, we tend to eat in excess of sodium, the exact opposite of what our ancestors do. And these electric ratios are very important because that's like a battery of energy used by our cell's plasma membrane. And, in order to pump calcium out and keep calcium under control, we have to get these gradients optimized for optimal cognitive function and physical energy function. Okay, I'm not going to talk about osmolality, but also if we eat too much sodium, we start to pee out our potassium through our kidneys, and we can get ourselves into a vicious cycle where we get further away from where we want to be with our ion plasma membrane gradients. Okay, so this is just showing again just a close-up of those ion plasma membrane gradients. And then the big thing happening in the brain is when you get high calcium inside the cytoplasm, it causes the release of glutamate. The glutamate in cytoplasm vesicles travels up to the plasma membrane on the synaptic cleft, merges with it, and then glutamate is released into the synaptic cleft, the space between these two neurons, presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, and it activates the postsynaptic neuron. So normal activation is normal and good. But if you have excessive activation, you get release of glutamate when you're stressed out, when you drink caffeine, when you're sleep deprived, when you're taking corticosteroid medications, okay? You also get activation of this receptor for glutamate. It's called the NMDA receptor when you have elevated glycine in the form of, let's say, glycine phosphate, glyphosate, the GP sprayed on the non-organic soy, for example. That's not good. Other things that can activate this receptor, aspartame can cause activation of these postsynaptic calcium system to increase calcium in the postsynaptic neurons, an excitotoxin, not good. Other things that can do this, beta amyloid protein. If you're, let's say you have insulin resistant and elevated insulin in the blood, you use up all your IDE, insulin degrading enzyme, and then beta amyloid protein is present in excessive amounts. It can activate this NMDA receptor. All of these things are bad because they increase calcium going into the cytoplasm. EMF from, let's say, cell phones, they can increase this too. So you get more calcium in the cytoplasm, and when it gets too high, it can start causing damage to the cell. Okay. Some other things. Little tricks to watch out for in studies. And now I kind of made my main points about diet and health and stress. Just a few additional filler slides here that in a lot of studies what they do to make one thing look good is they take a bunch of yuppies and they compare them to a bunch of average frustrated fat chumps who are eating the SAD diet. So no matter what other variable you add to this, this group's going to look good because these are motivated people trying to be healthy who exercise a lot, etc. Whereas these tend to be, slovenly, lazy, doesn't have their act together, a bunch of fat slobs. Okay, so that's one way that studies trick you, especially industry-funded studies will do that. Another way they'll trick you is they'll change one variable. Like if you substitute soy for meat and dairy, soy is not as bad as meat and dairy, but that doesn't mean it's a health food. It's not. Okay, we're not going to get into that in any more detail, but I'm just telling you those are some of the common tricks. One little brief word on antioxidants. Plants are where antioxidants come from because if it's hot out, 100 degrees in the sun, the human has to go walk under the shade to get out of the sun, whereas the plant can't walk in the shade. It has to sit there, so it uses chemicals to protect itself from the excessive energy of the sun. When we eat an animal, it's already used up as antioxidants. When we eat the plants, there's still antioxidants there that we can absorb. Your oxidant chemicals, the ones that are relatively harmful. I realize I'm oversimplifying things, but in general, an oxidant is something that will take electrons, an electron stealer. You can call it an electron acceptor. These are some examples, like excessive amounts of iron. Okay, I should have read Fe in here, free iron. Okay, excessive amounts of the halogens, like fluoride, chloride, and bromide or bromine. Okay, aluminum, omega-6 PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, like the cooking oils, because those lead to the production of toxic aldehydes like HNE, hydroxynonenal, and reactive oxygen species in us, peroxynitrates. Okay, and then we get the good stuff, the antioxidants from the plants, vitamin C, beta carotene, vitamin E, etc. Okay, this is sort of just more of the same about that antioxidant concept. Okay, and then here's a little bit more of a detailed, complex slide, but the gist of this one, it's from this paper right here on what are reactive oxygen species, free radicals, and oxidative stress in skin diseases. And the point I wanted to make is here's what I was talking about, the lipid radicals, lipid peroxides, and you end up with the toxic aldehydes like HNE, hydroxynonenal. Okay, myeloperoxidase is something released by your white blood cells, let's say your neutrophils, and it's used to make, in a sense, like almost like bleach, a hypochlorous solution. But the problem is when you eat fat, you activate your neutrophils and you release a lot of MPO, and it causes some problems for blood flow. Superoxide gets produced in excessive amounts when you eat excessive dietary fat because that inhibits the intermitochondrial membrane, like around coenzyme Q and complex 3. Okay, so anyways, that was kind of a fast overview, but I was kind of trying to show it in a way that I thought was intellectually, binary opposition, good versus bad, like the Super Mario brother walking through a video game. Do the good stuff, eat the plant foods, get your rest, sleep, religion, maintain your social support, all that stuff, have a purpose, attitude of gratitude. That makes you healthy versus all the bad stuff like I just talked about it. So anyways, if you like any of those slides, you can hit the print screen button and then you can have that slide for your own collection. So I hope that was helpful.